Okay, folks. Probably time we moved our agenda along. I'd like to welcome everybody here to today's event. My name is Jack Barr, President of the Powell River Chamber of Commerce, and we'd like to welcome you, much appreciated. It's indeed a pleasure to welcome you all to this very auspicious occasion. It's an honor, obviously, for the Powell River Chamber of Commerce to have been asked by the Office of the Premier to host this first and hopefully first of many visits from the Honourable Premier. The Powell River Chamber of Commerce has long been proud to be able to be the conduit to the community of many great speakers, be it locally and from afar, and today is certainly no exception. I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge that this event is on the traditional territory of the Tla'amin First Nation. And having said that, and as is a chamber tradition, to recognize our dignitaries and those who commit their valuable time and resources to the community, I wish to acknowledge the presence of Clint Williams, Hagoose of the Tla'amin First Nation. We've got regrets from our federal MP from North Island Powell River, Rachel Blaney. We also have our provincial MLA from Powell River Sunshine Coast, Nicholas Simons. Where are you? We have former MLA for us, Judy Tabsy Wilson here. Thank you, Judy. I received regrets from our Mayor, Dave Formosa, who unfortunately couldn't be here, sends his regrets. He's holidaying right now, but acting on behalf, our acting Mayor, Maggie Hathaway. Welcome. I think, and to correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Russell Brewer's here, our council member. Is he? No? No? Okay. I thought he was their regional director, Director of the Regional District, Patrick Barbizon. Colin Palmer's here somewhere. And any other directors you saw, Patrick, they were here? No? Economic Development, Scott Randolph, you here? And lastly, our chamber board members, again, myself, Jack Barr, President, Vice President Corey Carr, two board members, Linda Wegner and Isabel Southcott. Thank you all for coming. With that, I'd like to turn over the mic to Clint, who's going to make the formal introduction to our Premier. Clint?
Thank you. Again, welcome to the traditional territory of the Tla'amin Nation. I'm proud to be here representing our Tla'amin community and Tla'amin government. A couple of quick acknowledgements in the crowd from our leadership. We have Executive Council and Legislator Laurie Sparrow in the corner here. We also have Denise Smith, Legislator, in the back. Duck down, Stu. And also from our Economic Development Corporation, also known as Tla'amin Capital Assets and Investments, Roy Francis and Kelly Rankin. So, was asked to give some opening comments for the Chamber of Commerce event. We've got a pretty big name speaker in the community here, which is an honor, and we welcome you to the Tla'amin traditional territory. You know, I look out the windows and I acknowledge the passion of these people that are on the streets right now. Our passion is the same way for our traditional territory and the resources within it. So, you know, instead of just looking at them as a hindrance, I look at them as passionate people looking to help develop this community as well. And we've gone through this ourselves. We've had blockades, and we've dealt with this in the same way. But we also had to keep reminding ourselves that these are human beings as well. And I acknowledge and respect their opinion. And that's the beautiful thing about democracy, is everybody has their say. And there's a quote that says, the beautiful thing about democracy is everybody has their say. And the lousy thing about democracy is everybody has their say. So with that, I look forward to hearing our Premier speak, and welcome to the Tla'amin traditional territory.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief, for that. Those comments to open it up, and thank you for the warm welcome to Tla'amin territory. One of the things that you all know, and that people around British Columbia know, is that First Nations communities, particularly in the course that that Chief Clint has set for the community, his community here, means that First Nations are increasingly grabbing control of their own future in a world and in a country where First Nations have been really lived in a paternalistic environment in the post-colonial world, where governments in Ottawa and Victoria have dictated their vision of First Nations futures. First Nations haven't really had the kind of chance to succeed that they deserve, the way that non-First Nations communities experience every day. And with the course that you, Chief, and your community have charted, you are grasping an opportunity for your community to create the kind of vision that you have for your community, the future for your children that you choose for yourselves, and an opportunity to determine what the future will hold for all of you. And I do want to say thank you to you and the councillors and the staff that are with you from the Tla'amin First Nation for your patience and tenuous, your tremendous efforts that you've made over the years. We are finally getting there when it comes to reconciliation. We have more to do, But what we've seen in the last little while have been huge steps toward that. And I really do look forward to seeing what you are going to create for your community, but also all the benefits of the wealth that you create as they radiate throughout Powell River and all of the other communities in the Sunshine Coast. So thank you for your leadership. So Jack Barr, thank you very much. And to the Chamber of Commerce, thank you for having us. To Snickers, a legendary restaurant in the Sunshine Coast. Everybody knows Snickers. You're really kind to have us here today. And to all of you inside the room and them outside the room, thank you for making your voices known in a democratic process. That's really important. Mathew Wilson is here with me. And of course, Mathew's no stranger in Powell River. He's been born and raised here, and well, no, I guess you were born down in Sechelt, right?
Yeah.
Down in Porpoise Bay.
Middle Point, actually.
Middle Point. So.
For those who know where that is.
And in reflecting on Mathew and the decision that he's made to decide to seek public office, I was reflecting on, in some ways, how our upbringings were similar. I was raised in a family. My dad was a school teacher at a public school in Burnaby for 40 plus years. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. She invested all her time in trying to start nonprofit daycares in the basement of churches at a time when there was no government-funded daycare and almost no nonprofits. And she knew that parents needed support, and she knew that parents needed help if we wanted to raise children in a community where many times our parents aren't there to help us anymore because the world has changed so much. But around my dining room table, we had a lot of talk about politics and lots of independent thinkers in my family and all kinds of shouting and all kinds of disagreement. But what was valued at my table was the right to be able to say what you thought and to be respected for what you believed. What my dad and mom, and especially my dad, taught me was that if you believe in something, you should say it. If you stand for something, you should make sure you stick with it, what it is you stand for. And you should be unafraid of saying who you are, and then be unafraid too of finding your own values, knowing what it is you stand for, and being certain of that. And that's something that I think Mathew Wilson grew up with in his household. I have no doubt, with a mother like Judy and a father like Gordon, that there was lots of political arguments around the table. That's great for democracy, and it's great for growing character. Because one of the other things that I learned from my parents that I think has served me well in my life is I believe that in a democracy, we should all be unafraid to say what we stand for. Because the public, voters, citizens, can't make a decision about what they want for their own future when they are confronted with people who won't say what they stand for, or who will say that they stand for everything and therefore stand for nothing. That is not a choice. A choice is leaders who will be clear about what they believe in and be unafraid about standing up for it and sticking with it. And I have always believed that if I present my views to the public and citizens and be unafraid about that, I should also be unafraid if people will disagree with me, because sometimes people will. And sometimes a majority of people won't agree with me. And sometimes they won't vote for me. And sometimes maybe you win elections and sometimes maybe you lose. But it's better to lose an election knowing that you stood for the things in your heart and that you said the truth about what you wanted to do, and that you gave people an honest choice about their future, than it is to go to bed at night thinking you won an election because you didn't say what you wanted to do, because you didn't give people a clear choice. And so in this next coming months, we're going to be talking about what that choice is. And so I'll tell you what my choice is going to be. I believe that governments should be thinking about not how we can spend more of your money on your behalf. We should be thinking about how we can return more of your money to you so that you can decide how you want to spend it to support the people around you that you love. Because one thing I've discovered after my few years as Premier is that government can always figure out a way to spend more of your money. And the thing about government is they take it from you whether you want to give it to them or not. We must always resist that. We must always resist the pull of growing government, making it bigger, trying to do more, when that comes at a very real cost to citizens. And here we are now in our province. We are #1 in Canada in growth. We are growing 3 times faster than every other province combined. We have the lowest unemployment rate in the country, the lowest rate we've had compared to the rest of Canada since 1961. We've created 191,000 jobs in BC in the last, since we introduced the jobs plan, which is by far the biggest number anywhere in the country. British Columbia's economy is #1 and we are continuing to grow. And that means we are in a position to think about what we want to do with some of those benefits. Let's invest them in education so that our citizens, young and older, can have the skills that they need to go and take advantage of some of those jobs. Let's invest that in our healthcare system. Smart investments in healthcare, so that we can make sure that our healthcare system is there to support those who have worked, in particular, people who've worked all their lives to build this country and can get healthcare at home where they need it. Let's invest that by giving you some of that money back in your pockets, rather than by continuing to take more out of your paychecks. And here we are in this world, a very fragile one. And, you know, I know, for example, the guys from Texada who are here. It's tough when you can't go to work every day because something's changed. I want those guys to get back to work. Those are high-paying resource industry jobs that support a lot of people, and those paychecks support a lot of people in this community. I want folks in our forest industry at Catalyst. I want them to be working because, again, those high-paying jobs support a lot of people here. And those jobs pay for healthcare and they pay for education. I want to invest in helping you continue to diversify this economy. Let's build our tourism infrastructure. It's growing, up 18%. You've seen it in the street. You've seen it at the sports hardware shops. You've seen it down at the fish shop down the street, the fishing gear shop down the street, and the fish and chip shop down the street too. I want to help you diversify this economy and grow it. Because if we stand for jobs, if we decide we want to fight for jobs, we are going to have to stand strong. Because we've seen what's happened around the world. In the United States, we see a new level of unpredictability. And across the ocean with our markets in Asia, again, all kinds of uncertainty. If we want to succeed in British Columbia, and if we want to succeed in Powell River, you need somebody that's going to fight for jobs. You need somebody that's going to fight for your economy. Someone that's going to fight and make sure that your voice is heard down in Victoria. Now more than ever, British Columbia needs a fighter. And I believe that for Powell River, Mathew Wilson can be that voice. Make sure that you are heard when you have things that you need in this community to grow it, improve it, and create the future for your kids. But I believe in jobs. I believe that the dignity of a job is the most important thing in life. And so I'll finish with this story, because when I became Premier, we used to wonder why moms, single parents on welfare, most of them are moms, 80%, can't find their way into the workforce. Because government has been telling people for years, why don't you get off welfare and into work? You know, we'd really rather you worked. And we couldn't figure out why people weren't finding their way from social assistance into jobs. When we sat down to figure it out, you know what it turned out to be? We would say to those parents who were single parents, this is great, you want to go get a job, now you're probably going to have to go get training and upgrade. So we would encourage them to go get training, which is great. And then they would go meet with their social worker and they would find out that they would have to pay for the training themselves. They would have to find childcare and pay for it for their children themselves. They would have to figure out how they were going to get a loan to pay for their books. They would have to get the transportation to school. And on the day that they started their first class, their social assistance check would stop coming. No wonder single parents did not find their way from welfare to work. So we've changed all that. And if you're a single parent on welfare in British Columbia, we will pay for your childcare for a year, we'll pay for your training, we will pay for your bus or your transportation to get to school, we'll pay for your books, and we'll keep your check coming for a year. We have had 4,378 people find their way into that program who are finding their way from welfare to work for the very first time, many of them right here in Powell River. And you know what those mums say? Because 80% of them are mums. The biggest difference for them is not their children get to see them get up and go to work every day, which is an example in itself. Those children look at their mothers with pride. What a difference that is in a family. For that new generation of young people to see what it's like to go out to work every day and to be proud of their mom or dad when they see them do it for the first time. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming. There's a lot at stake in British Columbia today. And we have a big shareholders meeting on May 9th, which I know you know about. And as Chief Clint said, you'll get the chance, yes or no, to decide what kind of future you want for the province. But I do just want to end by saying thank you to all of you, because this community is a great community in which to live. People who leave always find their way back because of that. And this community has a fantastic future. I look forward, I hope that Mathew and I will be the ones that can help support you in building your community for the next 4 years, because this community can only get better. Thank you very much for coming. And so now we have time for questions and answers, I think. Do we? Jack?
We do.
Okay.
We do. We've got a couple of questions.
Jack's got a couple, okay.
We had, I've got these from the floor.
We can maybe do some random ones too.
You want to use some random ones?
Well,
From Kelly Gallagher, Site C down, no proper consultation with First Nations, 7-fold oil tanker increase, LNG, that's a methane bomb. You clearly are consulting only the corporations. What's left for my children's future? Why don't you represent the common person?
well, Jack, I can tell you didn't write that question. So there's a lot in there. Can I just, I'm going to talk to a few of them, because the one that's most important that I think was a running theme was First Nations consultation. So when it comes to, First Nations consultation on LNG, we have benefit agreements with almost all the First Nations along the line. For example, with the Haisla, who are we're going to be one of the terminals they've already paid out 3 per capita dividends to the tune of about $6,000 a piece to every single person in their community. And where did those people spend that money? They spent it in Kitimat and Terrace, maybe putting a new roof on their house, getting their car fixed, maybe getting a new fridge. That's money that has radiated throughout the community for the benefit of the First Nation there. We spent $12 million supporting the Shimshan First Nation in making sure that their community members are ready to take on those jobs as apprentices and journeymen and tradesmen in those projects. So, I see LNG in an opposite way. First of all, it's going to help us fight climate change around the world by exporting it to China and displacing coal. But most importantly, I think from my perspective, is a generational opportunity for rural and remote First Nations communities to be a part of a huge economic opportunity for the first time for some of them in 100 years. It means we are seeing communities going from probably 80 or 90% unemployment to huge numbers of people being employed, from being 80% unemployed to being 80% employed. And to me, that's a generational opportunity that we can't turn down. Site C, I am very, very proud of the $8 billion we are investing in what may be the last large-scale dam in Canada. It's going to be clean, green, low-cost energy for our kids, just like WAC Bennett envisaged for us. We have the 3rd lowest residential rates for power in North America because of his vision. We need to make sure that we carry on that vision for our kids. Today we've been, I guess the last thing I would say about that is in terms of consultation, there have been 6 lawsuits that have found their way to the court challenging Site C. All of them have lost. because the consultation was thorough, it was hard work. Some of the First Nations in the region are strong supporters and benefiting from the project, but more importantly, equally importantly, every British Columbian is going to benefit from Site C as we get that completed and make sure that another generation can have clean power just like we did.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Question 2 from Dr. Jay Ewell, and recognizing Aaron Reed, the board vice chair, and Ken Olive, the Teachers Association president. The city's embraced international education as an economic driver and has been working with us and via us to increase international students, which supports innovation and program choices for local students. You may know we were just turned down on our efforts to support an international school on ALC land adjacent to the high school. The application was strongly supported by the city and many other stakeholders with little to no opposition. My question to you is, have you considered changes to the ALC to be more responsive to local needs, as we know many other projects have been approved and there doesn't seem to be any justification?
Well, I mean, I know it's frustrating from a local perspective. The ALC operates without interference from politicians, though, and I think, you know, while politicians may have different views about what the ALC ultimately decides, we do not interfere. And that independence for the ALC is really vitally important. Now, we have made some recent changes to the ALC, controversial in the legislature. The idea has been that we want to make sure that regions of the province where pressure for development is very strong and is really threatens the integrity of our agricultural land, that we remain, we really keep the system strong so that we can always resist that pressure. But in what we've called Zone 2 in much of the rest of the province, the rules have been changed, so it's a little bit different. We're working through those changes to see how they work, and it seems to be working well. But I can say changes to the ALC do not happen lightly. They deserve a lot of debate and a lot of consultation because our agricultural land is really important to British Columbians. Can I just add this one last thing, Jack? Because on the last answer, I forgot to say it. Site C, that's 10,000 jobs for working people in British Columbia. 10,000 paychecks for people to take home. For LNG, over 30 years, it could be up to 100,000 jobs if we meet our goals. That's a lot of people going to work every day and supporting their families. And so when we talk about the difference between yes and no, I think the questioner and I would take a very different position, because there are those who will say we should not create those jobs because they prefer another path. The only other path is no jobs. And what I would say to all the working people out there is we can find a balance between environmental protection and job creation. And that is what we are determined to do, because it's important we leave our environment as pristine as we found it for our kids. But it's also important that each one of us, as a parent, as a grandparent, as a brother, a sister, a son or a daughter, has the opportunity, because we take home a good paycheck every month, the opportunity to look after the people that we love. So, Jack, okay, you got more. Jack's got more. He said he had two.
I got here. So, from Joseph McLean, one of your conditions for pipeline approval was meaningful involvement of First Nations, but the UN Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples requires that more than consultation and cash money, it requires working together as equals and reaching consent. The federal government is committed to adopting these rights. How can you proceed with large infrastructure projects when you do not have the consent of First Nations in your path?
Well, we do. I mean, we work hard to get consent of First Nations. When it comes to the Kinder Morgan pipeline, which I think is what he's talking about 41 or 45 of the 80 or so First Nations have signed agreements. And I think the federal government based their approval of Kinder Morgan pipeline on the fact that the company had made significant efforts. I don't think all First Nations along the line have agreed, and some may not. I think, but it's really important that we work hard to find those agreements with First Nations around the province, which we've worked hard to do. When it comes to LNG, I think it's a model for it, because we've got the huge majority of First Nations are benefiting in terms of jobs and benefits agreements, so revenue to them. And that's been hard-won support. We've been working on it for 5 years, First Nation by First Nation. And, you know, each one is unique, has its own unique vision of the future. And that means we need to talk respectfully and patiently, as we have over the last 5 years. That's a really important part of making sure that these projects go ahead, and it's something we don't, you know, there's a duty to consult and accommodate that's set out by the courts. I think, you know, in Site C and the case of LNG, our government has worked very, very hard to exceed that standard that's been set out there by the courts.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Anything else you want to add before we?
Well, there's a question.
Yeah, fair enough.
Hi.
My name is Maggie Gisley.
Hi, Maggie.
I'm from Nishka. I'm from Nishka territory, and I was raised here in Powell River since I was 3.5 years old. I come here because I see a lot of, I see a boiling in Canada of a lot of anger towards government, and I see it in Native communities, and I see problems, but I don't see a lot of the solutions. I'm talking about the 60 Stoops kids. I'm talking about the residential school survivors, and not. But you know, I'm talking about you know, how our country, Canada, we're losing our youth, and we're losing our youth badly, and that scares me, because when we lose our youth, we lose our country.
Yes.
And I see disrespectful use, and that, you know, and I see people around me that take for granted that government is taking care of, and you know, and they're angry because they're poor, you know, stuff like that. But I don't see that, what I would want to see is, I would want to see skills training.
Yes.
Age appropriate, put into schools from kindergarten to grade 12. Because we're assuming that our children are learning respect, how to deal with anger, hurt, and disappointment. We're believing that they're learning it at home. But because of how things changed in technology and babysitters, and 2 working families or single parents, that they're no longer learning those. And I see a disrespect and a disregard. And that disrespect and disregard, if we let it breed, we'll lose. So I want to know how we're going to bridge those gaps, how we're going to help our youth, help our own country. Because, I mean, I do public speaking. I do public speaking because I had a disadvantaged life. My birth parents were raised in residential schools. I was sexually abused from I was less than a year old till I was 3.5. I watched my baby brother die of hypothermia, and nobody's got time for that. So, you know, I mean, I see a fracture.
Yeah.
And I want to be a part of the solution, because I don't want to run with anger, because we can't change what happened with the same energy that created it. So I've taken my healing, and I want to have time to talk to you and tell you what I think. But where do people come and take that to? You know, where do we go when we have those things and we want to talk and we want to be a part of the solutions and not the argument or the anger?
Thank you, Maggie. Because I know it's hard to talk about. I have a very, I mean, I think we could talk about it for a long time. There are a couple of things, though, that I think, in terms of generally for First Nations kids, I mean, if you're thinking about First Nations kids, that's okay, it's a good song. Growing up in poverty is the biggest predictor of suicide, of future incarceration, joblessness, and I think one of the things that we can do is to support communities in growing wealthier, in making sure that communities have a chance for economic opportunity. to create, you know, as we were talking about, like the Tla'amin here, like the Niska have in spades, to be able to control their own education systems, their own healthcare systems, as the Niska have, and create that wealth in their own communities so that people are working and children are not growing up in poverty. That's part of the battle. But then there's the other part that you talked about, which is our children growing up to be respectful. I think, you know, that's a tougher one, and that's all kids in this culture. Yeah. Yeah, it's all kids who are exposed to reality TV and social media. And that's a tougher question, Maggie, and not one that I have a quick answer for today.
So who do I take my complaint to for that I was adopted at 3.5, and the Ministry of Children and Families told my adoptive parents that my mom wasn't married to my dad, and that I had no other brothers and sisters. Well, when I told stories of being physically and sexually abused, the ministry said I was over-imaginative, I was lying, and it wasn't true. Well, it was all true. I mean, I had insomnia, I was great, and there's other people like me that have these angers and these issues, and that don't trust because of the way we've been treated or because of our stories.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people in Canada that don't know the actual outfall of residential schools, because I'm like, what, second or third generation residential schools? But I have 44 brothers and sisters. I have 27 brothers and sisters I haven't met. And the system protected my dad, who was a pedophile. And my dad's never done time for his crimes against my brothers and sisters. So for me, I have a hard time trusting you.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time, not you as
I know what you mean.
government, I have a hard time trusting that when you won't let me speak and have my truths held accountable. And
the Truth and Reconciliation Commission made a sincere national effort to try and hear many of those kinds of stories, Maggie, and I'm sorry if they didn't hear you. The Murdered and Missing Women's Inquiry, the healing work that we are doing, that our provincial government has been doing around the province, in Prince George in particular, to hear the stories and the expressions of sorrow of people who have lost family members, has been part of that, another example of that. But you know, and Maggie, I wish you and I could carry on this conversation. I feel like we should do it somewhere more private. Thank you.
I think with that, it's a great opportunity. I'm getting an eyeball over here that we've got to move things along. I appreciate that. So, Madam Premier, on behalf of the Powell River Chamber of Commerce and everybody that's been able to attend here tonight, we'd like to present you with a gift.
Okay.
From the renowned Haida artist April White. And April, did you get a chance to meet the Premier earlier
I
on?
did, yes,
There you
and
go.
April gave me some cards.
Excellent, excellent. The piece that she has done is named Klujad, which means canoe woman, and it's a representation of a woman on her journey and the trials and tribulations along that trek.
Thank you very much,
And
April.
I'd like to get it for you, but it's down right in front of you down there.
Okay.
There you go.
Thank you. Should I unwrap it, April, so everyone can see it? Trials and tribulations of women. Not Lisa, which is unwrapping.
Just flip it open, just flip it.
Well, okay, but there's a lot of tape on it. There we go. I don't want to damage it either. Okay.
There you go.
Oh, wow.
Fabulous.
That is just beautiful, April. Thank you. And thank you. Thank you, Jack, and to the Chamber and all of you. April, thank you.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. And thank you one and all.